Having just come off of the first CMC-centered episode in Stairmaster, we go right into another episode that goes into their adventures in seeking a Cutie Mark. Personally, I would have spread these two episodes out from each other, as one of the reasons I enjoy MLP is seeing the wide variety of enjoyable characters throughout the show. Having two CMC-centered episodes in a row kind of draws away from that. But at least with the Showstoppers, we get a deeper look into what drives each of the CMC. As the episode begins, we see Applejack showing the CMC an old clubhouse in a tree. It may not look like much, but it does give them something to work on together. Next up, we get a scene with Scootaloo riding her scooter through town, along with some music that sounds like it should belong to Rainbow Dash. But we can easily see that Scootaloo has quite some talent on her scooter. When we see Apple Bloom, we notice just how much better the clubhouse is looking. And from what she says, it sounds like she ended up doing all of the repairs and the painting on her own. Again, I have to wonder why she had trouble putting together a table in the last episode. We see Sweetie Belle doing some more of her singing while using her tail to dust off a table. But she seems a little more shy about her singing once Apple Bloom and Scootaloo come along. Which seems a bit odd, considering that she was more than willing to sing her heart out in the last episode. Applejack arrives at the clubhouse and is actually enjoying Sweetie Belle's singing, but isn't nearly as impressed with Apple Bloom or Scootaloo's singing. So, within the first few minutes of the episode, we are getting some very clear hints as to what the CMC's talents might be. Whether these hints at their natural talents will one day end up being their cutie marks, I really don't know. It would certainly fit with the overall story arc, and make a lot of sense for the CMC. But I'm really hoping that the writers will come up with something a little more interesting than that. Considering all the time that they have spent together trying to find their cutie marks, I have to wonder if any of them will perhaps help some other young colt or filly to find their cutie mark. And perhaps that might end up getting one of them, or even all three of them, a cutie mark that shows helping others to find their special talents. I don't know, it's a thought at least. I have to admit though, the CMC's determination here is still adorable to watch. And I really like the way Applejack says her line here.
Well, okay then!
In the next scene, we get some fun antics from the CMC as well as a very catchy tune in the background. Even listening to this music by itself is rather enjoyable. We see the CMC feeding the pigs, and it makes me a bit curious to see that the pigs are acting like normal pigs. I mean, in other episodes, we see cows having a conversation, buffalo being part of an independent tribe, even sheep that are able to talk. But in the case of pigs, they don't seem any different from the pigs in our world. I mean, is it only the hoofed mammals that are vegetarians that have achieved sentience here in Equestria? Anyways, we see the CMC going through many activities in rapid succession, which seems quite similar to how Apple Bloom was attempting to get her cutie mark with the help of Rainbow Dash during Call of the Cutie. I would have thought that Apple Bloom had learned that that sort of thing doesn't work too well, considering the last time she tried it, but now she has taught both Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo to do the same thing. Even though this whole sequence is contributing a lot of filler to the episode, it is enjoyable to watch what the animators come up with. I particularly like the scene where it looks as though they are scaling a mountain, and it turns out to be only 20 feet tall. Something I hadn't noticed before, though, is the fact that there is a brief moment where all three of the CMC have the same colored eyes. The sequence comes to an end at Twilight's library, where the CMC have managed to pull at least 100 books off of the shelves. Twilight is, of course, annoyed with all the books being scattered, but honestly, this really shouldn't be anything new for her. I mean, how many other times in the series has just this sort of thing happened? Come to think of it, there was even a time when Twilight just pulled out all of the books herself for reshelving day. When Cheerilee suggests that the CMC take part in an upcoming talent show, we get a few more scenes of watching them go around town getting supplies. There is definitely more filler in this episode than what I remember. Although, seeing Sweetie Belle taking fabric from Rarity without asking first tells us a little bit more about the kind of relationship that they have. I can imagine that Rarity is still at the point where she doesn't want Sweetie Belle to be touching anything at the Carousel Boutique. When they arrive back at the clubhouse, we see the CMC discussing what they should be doing for the talent show. Apple Bloom tells Sweetie Belle that she should do the singing, but again, Sweetie Belle shows hesitation when singing in front of others. Still seems rather different from how she was only one episode ago. Instead, Sweetie Belle wants to follow in her sister's footsteps by doing the designing, which leads to Scootaloo doing the singing and Apple Bloom doing the dance choreography. So that just makes me wonder what this whole production would have been like if Sweetie Belle did have the confidence to sing in front of others. Scootaloo would likely have ended up doing the choreography and Apple Bloom would have ended up doing the costumes and the scenery. Of course, we get even more hints that this would have been the better idea in the very next scene. Scootaloo is helping Apple Bloom with her dance moves, Sweetie Belle is helping Scootaloo with the music, and Apple Bloom is helping Sweetie Belle with the designs. But not one of them seems to pick up on the fact that what they want to do is not what they might be best at. Even when Applejack arrives and is obviously uncertain about what they are putting together, we still see that the CMC are being clueless about their lack of skill. This kind of behavior seems to be a running gag with the CMC, even from this early on in the show. It can be cute the first few times that we see it, but it tends to get old after we are still seeing this kind of behavior even after all this time. When we get to the talent show, we finally see everything the CMC have put together. And it really goes the extra mile to both impress and confuse the audience. The writers, the composers, the voice actors, and even the animators all come up with something that both succeeds and fails at the same time. And that's really what makes it so entertaining, when you are watching something that has been created to be intentionally bad and yet still keeps your attention so well. This scene is obviously a parody of an 80s style rock ballad, and it shows a lot of creativity in how much the CMC succeed at failing. And of course they end up getting the award for Best Comedy Act despite not even trying for it. The episode comes to an end with Twilight hoping that the CMC have figured out what they were doing wrong and discovering that they still haven't picked up on the message. As for me, I actually had trouble keeping my focus on this episode. Maybe it was just having finished reviewing Stairmaster and having to go through another CMC-focused episode right after, but it was hard for me to actually focus on the good parts of this episode. And there are some good moments here. I think the montage of random activities was enjoyable to watch, and the music that went along with it was rather catchy. I like the creativity that went into the rock ballad that the CMC came up with. And I still enjoy the interactions between them. But all in all, I think this is one of the weaker episodes of Season 1. There really aren't that many surprises with the story, so it seems rather predictable. The CMC had a few adorable moments, but it wasn't enough to keep my attention. And even though I like some of the filler sequences, there really is too much filler in the episode. It seems like they had come up with an idea for an episode, but couldn't come up with enough story to fill out the time. At least when I was reviewing the Cutie Pox with Buck Brony, I could tell that there was much more to enjoy with that episode despite the filler. Even with Stairmaster, we do spend a lot of time with the CMC trying to find their cutie marks, but it is supplemented with a bit of an adventure in the Everfree Forest that draws us in. With the showstoppers, however, there just isn't enough to draw in the audience for the majority of the episode. I wouldn't say that this is a bad episode, but I wouldn't call it good either. This is the first episode of the series that I would just put into the okay category. It's fun to watch the first time, but it doesn't get better with each viewing, like many of the other episodes do. What do you think? Would you agree that this episode has trouble keeping your attention? Or do you believe that there is much more to enjoy here than meets the eye? I would like to hear your thoughts about the showstoppers, and here's to hoping that the CMC gets some more variety to their episodes in the future. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.